welcome to the 9642 podcast. This is your host, Mr. Number 9.
And this is The Fool.
Your 96 best place to listen to...
For 10 years.
Yes, for our 10th season of our mostly up-to-date...
And unqualified. And unrequested.
ramblings of the various issues in the world of sport.
Or something like that.
Hello everyone, we are back to talking about round ball. Actually, we talked about round ball last time as well, but
Yeah.
we've finished the Women's World Cup with a great with an amazing final.
So amazing.
On Sunday, incredible match in Sydney. It was such a great tournament, full stop. But I think there's just so many highlights. Spain, after losing a game in the group stages to Japan, managed to claw their way back through the tournament and through a pretty tough draw as well, and then make it all the way to the final and obviously win.
It was awesome by them, really. The Spanish really deserved it. And even just getting to the World Cup has been a bit of a mission for them. There was all sorts of shenanigans going on with the Spanish FA and their team and everything. I don't know if it all got fully resolved or not, but, they made it to the tournament. You say they had that one bad defeat against Japan, but other than that, they've been absolutely excellent all the way through.
Yeah, once they got to the group stage, they've basically looked really good. They've got their game plan working, and they've had the results deservedly. Semi-finals, great win against Sweden, I thought. Absolutely clutch in the knockout stages. Olga Carmona, who's basically done the job for La Roya at the business end of the tournament, and then obviously she scored in the final as well. But without getting ahead of ourselves, we have to, I think, pay tribute to Australia as well.
Yes.
Great. That game against England really could have gone any way. Sam Kerr did the equalizer, but unfortunately England just had a bit too much in the tank to go and to the final.
Sam Kerr they tried their very best to make it the Sam Kerr show and drag Australia into the final, but couldn't quite manage it, unfortunately. So she got the first equaliser and then somehow missed the second equaliser, which could have kept everything on a knife edge, but then Australia needed to push forward. England got the third goal, and that was pretty much it.
But it was a good tournament for the Matildas. Unfortunately, they couldn't win the bronze. Sweden, I think, worthy winners of the bronze medal as well. They've had a good tournament as well. Yeah,
that seems to be their medal. They seem to be getting to that fourth spot, and I think they've won third, like 3 times the last 4 World Cups or something stupid like that. Like, just always can't get past a semi-final, always into the third, fourth, and just win that one. But Sweden actually played reasonably well all tournament as well. Say Spain outplayed them for most of the semi-final. Sweden looked like they got back into it, and then they fell asleep for 90 seconds, was it, after the equaliser? And then Spain just capitalised, and Carmona, I think one of the few people to have scored a winner in the match winner in the semi-final and the grand final of a World Cup. So, which is pretty amazing as well. Like, talk about clutch players. That's almost the definition of clutch, Come in,
absolutely,
score the winner in the two of the most important matches in your career. So,
absolutely, 2 games in the knockout stages. It's been some great highlights throughout the tournament. Obviously, Hinata Miyazawa scoring 5 goals, incredible performance. Unfortunately, the Japanese team, who were our favourites, couldn't quite make it through to the semis.
No, they couldn't quite deal with Sweden's high press and Sweden's long ball in that quarter final. they sort of got there at the end once Sweden sort of ran out of steam. But yeah, especially the first half, the Japanese, it was probably their worst half of football. The whole tournament was that first half of the quarterfinal. They just didn't seem to be able to deal with it. And one of the
Yeah,
things we were talking up about them before that last podcast was how well the Japanese seemed to be able to modify their plans and how flexible they were. And then they went out there and just didn't seem to be able to do it for 80 minutes of the game or 70 to 80 minutes of the game. Just couldn't change things. And
yeah, yeah.
then they came to life. And it was like the last 20 minutes or half an hour of the game was like exhilarating. But yeah, it's just a pity.
Absolutely. And another highlight, I thought Katito Dayani for France played
Yes.
really well as well.
Yeah.
Who 3 assists and 4 goals herself. Up
Yeah.
there with the potential player of the tournament stakes
Yes.
as well. Unfortunately, losing to Australia in that nail-biting
Yeah.
game, uh, which went to penalties. Or you and
A
I
lot.
watched.
A lot of penalties. But yes, that was a
Yes,
great match to watch.
it kept going. I mean, it was
Mm.
basically one of those penalty shootouts that you're just like, it's nail biting
Mm.
to the end. You don't know what's gonna happen. But I think overall the tournament, and FIFA's already said it, like it's the best Women's World Cup tournament. I think that's correct.
Yeah.
They've put the game on stage. I think the fact that it's not really, it's weird that it's still managed to do it, even though it's only 6 months after a Men's World Cup. I think the fact that people aren't football fatigued.
Yeah.
Uh, the tournament, I think, was played to a really entertaining. I know
Yeah.
we have a mutual friend who complained that the reffing allowed the game to be okay. To be fair, he didn't complain. He said that the reffing is a bit more lenient, which he thinks caused more injuries, which I think is
Mm.
fair enough. But
Yeah.
also that it made the game flow and made it more watchable.
Yeah. It
Um,
was an interesting discussion that around the refereeing and whether because they are being more lenient because the players less were more lenient about the bad calls and about the bad tackles, as opposed to
yeah,
the danger levels ramping up. Everybody sort of was pretty chill about it, but not super
yeah,
chill, just things. Which you say allowed for this more smoother, free flowing game where things weren't getting chopped down and stopped and descending into chaos at any point. It seemed to flow nicer.
yeah.
And you say it was a nice attacking games. There was always entertainment. It was a pleasure to watch. Say, and yeah, it was really good. And say, it's just 6, 7 months after a men's World Cup, and it stood out on its own. I felt like there
Yeah,
was
absolutely.
no shadow of it. Like you'd think that
Yeah,
close, and the storylines that had come through the men's World Cup, Messi finally winning everything, that could overshadow things, but it did not. It was its own thing. There was their own storylines in here. You had USA going for the three-peat coming in, and then looking not really that great, but sort of making it through to the knockout stages, and then failing there. And there's plenty
yeah,
of discussions that have been had about that. Say Japan going along so well and looking so awesome, and everybody sort of getting behind that, and that causing such great, and then them falling off. Sweden playing their style and looking good for it and going so far, but once again not making the final. Australia, that's just set everything alight over in Australia. The Matildas going so
yeah,
far,
yeah,
and then you had England and Spain just going about their stuff the whole time, and just showing why they're two of the better teams in the world.
yeah. And I think like it's just made us more look. I think I know I'm not a hater, but I think the fact that a lot of the favorites, like your Norways and your USA's, got knocked out
Yeah,
very quickly.
Germany as
Uh,
well out of the group stage,
Germany as
Canada out of the
well.
group stage. Yeah,
The uh, it basically has made the game, made the tournament more interesting. Like the fact that we had the Philippines get first appearance at a World Cup,
yeah,
senior level, doesn't matter the gender. and they got their first win. Similarly, Morocco and the managing to get through to the knockout stages as
Yeah.
well. So
Suppose.
there's some really great progress around even South Africa, I believe, made it through to the
Yes.
knockouts. So
And New
there's
Zealand. I mean, New Zealand. That was our first win. Our first win of any gender as well.
yes,
So
absolutely.
yeah.
So lots of highlights, lots of historic moments. I'm really looking forward to the next tournament. It's going to be in 2027. Obviously, there's a
Yeah.
bunch of bids happening now. They haven't yet decided where it's going to be, which
Mm.
is quite interesting given the men's one is known like 10 years in advance. I
Yeah.
feel
No.
like.
Yeah.
I mean, 2010 we knew about Qatar, but I guess that was like an exceptional situation where they
Those.
decided the
Yeah.
next
Yeah.
in one time. But even the World Cup in 2026 being in America was decided ages ago, and we haven't yet
But I suppose
worked
we
out
haven't.
what the
I suppose it's not 4 years, but we don't know where the 2031 is yet. So,
yeah the
but that will be decided
2031
soon.
I bel the 2030 World Cup I believe is going to be decided later this year.
Yeah. Maybe FIFA will get around to merging the sort of the bids together, since the tournaments are sort of a year apart. You know, at least
Yeah, I
the
mean,
announcements. You know what
America.
I mean?
Yeah, I think America, Mexico are doing a joint bid for the Women's World Cup, which would be
Mm.
exactly a year after hosting the Men's World Cup. So that would be interesting to. I think obviously they could host it. There's a bunch of other countries trying to go for it. There's Netherlands, Belgium, I believe Portugal, Spain as well.
Right. Yeah.
Currently, for the Men's World Cup in 2030, there is the sentimental favorite, a Uruguay
Yeah.
bid,
Come on.
which is combined with Argentina, Chile, and Paraguay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so there would be four countries hosting it, and they've other than Paraguay, they've all hosted a World Cup before,
Yeah.
and I think they're reasonably close by to travel around. I think like
Mm.
Santiago flying over the Andes to um, Buenos Aires or Montevideo is less than a couple of hours. So this would be a very accessible World Cup for people
Yeah.
cost wise.
It'd be very
There
compact.
is a Yeah, Great Britain, which would have been the other potential sentimental favorite, like
Mm.
United Kingdom and Ireland hosting it,
Yeah. Yeah.
so basically five associations. They have decided not to bid for the World Cup. They're gonna bid to host Euro 2028
All right. Yeah.
instead, and there was a weird Egypt, Greece, Saudi Arabia bid, but because AFC member cannot host the 2030 edition. Um, so they've ruled out that bid. Basically, it doesn't matter that it's a cross federation because there's a Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Greece bid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, I was like, oh, there's no geopolitical reason for this bid at all. It's purely football reasons. Um,
Purely.
purely. But there is another cross. There is another crossbred, which is like Spain, Portugal, Morocco. They did add Ukraine to their bid, which feels like let's try and win political favor once again for your bid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and hard for me to see Ukraine hosting a World Cup so soon after what's going on in the country right now. I mean,
Yeah. Exactly.
obviously, I hope there's not a war still going on there in 2030.
Hopefully,
Um,
but yeah.
hopefully. But there's a lot of time needed for recovery and
Yeah.
rebuilding the country after what it's gone through.
Exactly.
And we obviously don't know, it's an unresolved situation. We don't know what the situation will be in Ukraine in 2030, for that matter.
Yeah.
But a
Well,
Spain,
then.
Portugal, Morocco bid is
Yeah.
not bad. You'd have go back to
Okay.
Africa from 2010. It's
Yeah.
been 20 years.
I do like
Spain,
that bit.
and there's a cultural, like, unlike the other cross confederation bid, I'm kind of, where it was like this is clearly a weird political bid. This
Yeah.
Spain, Portugal, Morocco, you got those countries have a shared history of
Mm.
and some shared culture and there's a lot of and it makes sense that those three could host a World Cup together.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still my pick would still be the South American pick. Send it back to Uruguay. It's 100
I
years
think
later.
so. I personally think so. And the South
Mm.
Americans have been planning this bid since 2004.
Yeah.
So Uruguayans slowly expanded their. Initially, it was going to be Uruguay, Argentina, and then Uruguay, Argentina, Argentina, Chile, and then they added Paraguay to the mix. 2030, it'll be a 48-team World Cup, I believe. The
Yeah.
20, it will. South America will have something like 6.5, 6 and a third qualifying spots.
Something like that. Yeah. I failed to keep track of the qualifying spots all around once they expand up.
Yeah, so because it's gonna be in there's an expanded number of spots. I assume
Mm.
at least at least three of those spots will be taken from South America to be given because they can't so that the addition we can have teams from other continents actually show up. Otherwise, literally every team in South America will have qualified for this World Cup.
Yeah. And I
Just
assume that will
looking,
be something going on with it all anyway.
yeah. So CONMEBOL has 6 direct slots and a playoff slot. So okay, so you get one for the host, fine, and um, the one for the host, and you'll probably have well, 4 for the hosts taken because one extra spot in every tournament is given to the host anyway, and you probably
Yeah.
take 3 from CONMEBOL, but it seems maybe that's not the way it is. Because CONCACAF it says has 3 plus 3 direct slots. So I think that means 3 hosts for the 2026 World Cup, and you've got 3 others qualifying after that, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. Vaguely.
So, and there's 2 playoff slots. Oceania has 1 playoff slot with 1 direct slot. UEFA with 16, and Africa will get 9 direct
Ooh.
slots, and Asia will get 8. There's 6 playoff slots where 3 teams will qualify, so it'll be, from my understanding, that's how it'll work.
Well, that's yeah.
40, and we'll only know how the playoffs will work out after a while. Like qualification tournament has already started for. Oh no, it's not yet quite started. I thought it had started in CAF. It's not yet started. But yeah, so the format's kind of set there. I think all the 2 remaining bids are both good.
Yes.
Should we should we should have a good tournament regardless of how it turns out in the end. Now,
Yeah. No. Yeah. I think so.
I think we'll be happy with all the outcomes there. Now, moving on from our international game, and before we start talking more and more about future World Cups, only 4 years from now, or only 3 years from now, actually.
Yeah.
Um,
3. Well, 3 and 4.
Also, side note, like, come on, Rubiales kissing Hermoso after the World Cup,
Oh
and then
yes.
I heard people on the internet going, "Oh, but Casillas kissed a reporter after winning." I'm like, okay, that lady he kissed was his girlfriend, who became his wife.
Little
Okay,
difference.
there's a little difference. I think you can assume your partner consents to you kissing her when something really awesome in your life has happened together,
Yeah.
And she's also a sports journalist. Like, that is a legitimately wonderful moment that was, like, unplanned, completely, And I understand this is as well, but, like, come on. Like, there's, like, a boundaries. What Casillas does is not comparable to this.
No, exactly. It's different things. Um, yeah, I know. It's a little crazy, and it's a little, but at the same time, everything's got a little bit crazy about it as well. I see. Hermosa was playing it down as well a little bit, but you sort of get the feeling
It's
that
fair enough she played it down, but I think
yeah,
at least the head of the Spanish FA went, "Nah, my bad. I shouldn't have done that."
yeah.
Like, I think that's
He
fair. Like,
he tried
you can make a mistake and then go, "No, I shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry," and that's okay.
he did try to play it down at first, but yeah, they then turned around and was like, no, okay, I was wrong. You're right, I'm wrong. So it's okay. But yeah, think also given a little bit of the swirly clouds around Spanish FA and the women's team, and their coach and everything, that sort of you know
Yeah,
also leaves a little sourness in it. But I I,
absolutely.
I get the feeling that Carmosa is not as worried about it. She's probably not particularly happy about it, but um,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, if she was making a song and dance about it, then I might feel differently about it. But given at least publicly she's playing it down, um, I'm willing just to be like, yeah, you shouldn't have done it. You've apologized. It was stupid.
We can move on because you've apologized.
Yeah.
So that's
And as I understand what he said, it's not like one of those half apologies where you're like, I'm sorry if someone took offense. It was like just a full on, yeah, my bad. I did things wrong.
yeah,
So
yeah,
that's good.
yeah. Now, onwards to the Premier League. We've had 2 rounds so far. How do you feel about your boys in blue?
After the first round, I wasn't feeling too bad, and we got Casida and um, the Southampton boy, whose name has just
Uh,
slipped off the top of my head.
we will definitely talk about the transfer windows for sure.
I mean, that made me happy.
I think
And
getting
then
both Casado and Lavia, like that
Olivia,
midfield,
yeah.
Chelsea has a very good midfield.
Mm,
Seen some very interesting things about Chelsea's finances. Apparently, Chelsea's nowhere near FFP. They would have to spend another $1 billion to get there.
right.
So they've done their books and math sums very cleverly,
Yeah,
and
that's
and I think
so.
to be fair, Chelsea's always sold well.
Yeah,
They've always sold players properly and gotten their full value out of them. So I never think of Chelsea as a club that will have issues with FFP.
yeah, no, we don't.
Like,
Despite
they've
how much we
figured
seem
it
to
out.
spend, yeah, as you say, despite how much we seem to spend, um, we do seem to have that balance just right, where we know how to keep that going. So, and I think part of it
Yeah,
as well is that we tend to be quite. Our recruitment seems sometimes can be misdirected, but it's pretty spot on about its values and who they want. So they're not having to slap too much money around sometimes on things, and if something doesn't work out, they're also pretty good and easy to move it on for the right value as well, so that they're not
yeah,
nothing's too horrendous.
and a lot of the players you've sold are academy products, so that's pure
Mm,
profit on the books.
yeah,
That's
exactly.
immediately There's no net profit. That's pure gross profit. Like, Mason Mount is adding 70 million straight into Manchester to Chelsea's FFP, and
Yeah,
Chelsea's academy consistently gets players for somewhere between 10 to 20 million sold all around the Premier League in Europe or even the Championship to try, and so they always, and they have invested well into the academy. Yeah, I know Chelsea didn't play that great in their second game,
no, that wasn't quite as great.
but there's still a few players it looks like Chelsea are looking to get. Obviously, West Ham played really well. I think they're
Yeah.
looking quite They're looking like a team that could do well this season. Brighton at the top of the table alongside Manchester City. I think nobody's surprised by the top of the table. I don't think everybody's kind of like, yeah, those Brighton, Manchester City, Arsenal, they all had good teams. We expected them to continue. Brighton, will see further down the season how well they do with having to deal with European football.
I mean, yeah, Brighton's played Luton and Wolves, right? So
Yeah.
it always helps. But I think it was last season as well. Brighton stayed in the top, near the top for quite some bit. I think they were even top for a while, and then stayed top four or top five reasonably deep into the first half of the season. So yeah, and
Yeah.
they did end up seventh. Yeah. So
Yeah.
wouldn't be surprised if it's
And
something similar.
absolutely. And so for me, the boys in red, okay, on field, there's still a work in progress. I think the midfield still needs to get a few things. I'm sure we still need another striker.
Mm.
Haven't yet got one. Against Wolves, they didn't look the best, and Spurs completely outplayed United. But I think it's more worrying that I think things at Manchester United are still not behind the scenes. How way the club runs is definitely terrible. Like the whole issue with Mason Greenwood, because apparently there was a leak to the Athletic saying he's they're the club's just waiting for the England women's team to come back to Manchester, and they're gonna consult them, quote unquote. They're probably just gonna tell them their decision, and then Mason Greenwood was gonna be reintegrated into the first team,
Okay.
and then so the Athletic. Someone leaked this to the Athletic, so the Athletic went to Manchester United and said, "Hey, we've heard this. Do you care to comment before we publish anything?" And then apparently within 24 hours of the Athletic getting in touch with them, Manchester United just put on their webpage that we have not yet made a decision. We're going to consult with the women's players when they come back, and then we'll make a decision from there. Which obviously put like a target on the back of these women's players who are at the World Cup,
Yeah.
because this is the internet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Exactly.
it's this ridiculous situation where they've put the blame on the women's players who, like, by the way, it's not their job to decide if Mason Greenwood should play for Manchester United or not. All
No.
they needed they should have already told them, hey, how would you feel about it? And if they're listen to their concerns, hear it out, and then be like, okay. And they could have just told the Athletic, like, no, it's not true. We haven't made a decision. We're still going through this consultation process. There's a lot of stuff we have to do. It's really sensitive. We can't about it.
Yeah.
And,
Exactly.
that would have been, like, probably a lie, but at least one you're not going to get caught in. Like, because if the Athletic then publishes something, Manchester United have said, no, we haven't made a decision, and no, anyone leaking, getting in. We know people have quote unquote heard leaks. They're not true. Then the Athletic are generally a sort of firm that'll publish both sides and go, look, we've heard this from a leak, but Manchester United said nothing's done. Who knows? They'll at
Yeah.
least
Yeah.
give you that.
Yeah. Exactly.
I'm sure a tabloid will go. It's not. Will not necessarily give you a balanced report, but the Athletic don't tend to do that, right? Like we know
Yeah.
how they report stuff that gets leaked to them. They even the fact that they went to Manchester United to be like, hey, do you want to comment on this before we talk? We publish something. So they then had to publish their whole what they were leaked, to be like, hey, look, this is what we heard. It's completely like different, because Manchester United also said more things like, we have to take into account Mason Greenwood's, the fact that he's been at the club since he's 6 years old, and his partner. I mean, it's a very messy situation. I mean,
It is very messy. Yeah.
everybody knew that as soon as Mason Greenwood is absolved of any crime, and also like he didn't go to court. So not only did he never get convicted, never went to court and was found innocent, he never went to court. So it's a very different legal situation, because Manchester United, obviously, If he's got any sort of agent, we'll go, if you don't want me at the club, you have to pay out my contract, like all of it. Like there's nothing I've done. They could have taken him to court, but the PFA would have just funded his lawyers and kept him. This is what the players' union exists for.
Exactly. Yeah.
And and they would have been able to, and it would have gone through a process which wouldn't have been that quick, and Manchester United would have had to still pay for his fee, his wages while he's at court. Now the backlash was immediate and immense because there's a women's fans group who came out and said, look, there's a lot of talk about his club's supposed responsibility to him and his partner and his child, but nobody talks about the alleged victim and all these other, and they're all fair. And for whatever reason, the alleged victim and witnesses have withdrawn their case. By UK law, nobody, this is like, they're allowed to come back. And so for a lot of the stuff that was discussed in legal matters is not meant to be discussed in public because it could still go back to court and we'll need a jury. And this is a criminal case. It's not a civil case. Mason Greenwood, we've got video evidence. It doesn't look good. If Mason Greenwood was not a good player, then Manchester United would have fired him right away. Like as soon as it came up, be like, look, you're not going to play for the club. You might be on the books. You're never going. Well, once your court case is sorted out, once your legal matters are done, you can go find a club, and we're happy to listen to offers for loans and whatnot. But you can't play for United anymore. We're not going to stand in the way of your career. We're still paying out your wage as we legally have to. But you're kind of, and we'll help you find a club, which is what Manchester United is still doing, like what they've ended up having to do, except they've waited a year and they've obviously screwed up plans because obviously they were they need another striker. Rasmus Højlund is injured, so he can't play. They needed another striker. If they were expecting Greenwood to come back, I can imagine that being a plan. But now Greenwood can't play for them.
No.
So like on the field, it's messed up the. Not only did it mess up, like it's a shit show. Like everybody looks bad here, like from the hierarchy.
Yeah. No, there's not really much good through all this anywhere. You say there's a bit of a shit show all through. You're saying, it does make it look like Manchester United hierarchy was sort of waiting because of who he is and how he fits into their plans. If he'd been anybody else or any lesser player, then he would have just been dropped straight away. But no, not this time. Waited, then there's the leaks and just everything. Like,
there's a way to deal with it. Like, why is there leaks?
Yeah, why is there leaks? Even with the leaks,
And the way they reacted to the leaks clearly shows that it came from somebody in the club who is in a position of relative importance. This is not like a rumor from a random person.
Yeah.
Because the Athletic's not going to just trust the ramblings of somebody who's like, oh, I work at Old Trafford. I heard this on the grapevine. They'll be like, okay, shut the fuck up.
Yeah,
like, we're not a tabloid.
Exactly. Who do you think we are? Come on.
Yeah. But if it's like somebody important in the Athletics and be like, hey, we've heard this. This is like, credible source. Like, obviously they're not going to name a source, which is fine. They're not supposed to. And they're going to be like, oh, credible sources tell us this. What's happening,
Yeah.
And
as you say, I think there was ways United could have responded to that better. Which may not have made it so much of a so messy afterwards.
They could have even just told the Athletic, look, it's not true, we haven't made a decision, we're still going through the consulting process, it's long and complicated. And if the Athletic did publish it, they could have just published a thing after, going like, look, I know this has been come out, it's not true, we're not and then everybody's like, it's a he said, she said. That's still bad. But they because everybody knows the Athletic isn't publishing something from nowhere. They've got a credible source. If they say they have a credible source, that's a credible source.
I mean,
it looks bad, but at least they've kind of shown something. They're not putting players under the bus. They're not like,
No, exactly.
this sounds nonsense. This was a nonsense situation.
It really was. It seems to me that, to be fair, if there's this leak, you say it's the Athletic, so you sort of assume it's fairly true.
Yeah.
The answer to that may be sort of a halfway, which like, yes, that's our preferred scenario, but clearly we're going to go consult with the women's team, which we can't at the moment because they're over in the world. Most of them are over in Australia. So once they're all back and together and the squad's here, then we're consulting with them, putting forward this idea, and we are going to take in their viewpoints. They don't even
need to mention all that because it's not untrue if they say we haven't yet made a decision. Because officially they're still going to consult the women, right?
Exactly. That's
anybody who like.
The problem is that if you say, "Oh, it's not official, we haven't done it," and then you consult the woman and you say, "Yeah, Mason's, Greenwood's coming back to the team," but he goes, "Oh, see, you predetermined that before, because that's sort of the crux of the leak has said." And it's like, well, take that into, accept that and go, yes, that is our preferred position. It is not our final position. We want to talk to the women first. Like, there is no decision. Like, yes, if you pushed us, that would be preferred, but we're not saying that until after we've talked to them. And that is an open thing. If they say no, then it's a no. We'll find out once they get back, I guess. So, like, at least then it's...
The fact that they say it's consulting means that even if they said no, they wouldn't have necessarily listened to them.
No, well, that's...
Right? Like,
we've all been through that, right?
And also, like, what a weird position to put these players. They've already interviewed them. Like, when they say that consulting, what they're gonna say is just like, look, this is after talking to you, thank you for your feedback, we're doing this. This is like when your boss has already decided what your bonus is gonna be, and they yet haven't had that conversation to tell you what it is gonna be before it goes into the thing. You don't get to negotiate again when they're gonna tell you what it is. He's gonna say there's a final consult where they're like, this is our results, and you can gripe, but it's done. You're not gonna be able to change it. At that point,
that goes for anything, right? When the upper echelons of your work have hierarchy have decided on a thing, but they need to consult, so they do their consult and like, oh, we've consulted, and the decision we were always going to make is the one we're going to make. So yay, we consulted. Yeah.
Like, you've got you've got your KPIs. No company gives out 100%. They're like, okay, everybody's getting 50 or 75%. And then it's based on individual. That's the base. We're getting 75%, and then it's based on individuals, how much you get of that 75%. And they'll go to you like, oh yeah, we had a discussion, and I agreed that you deserve at least 80% of whatever we end up deciding is our top KPI. And then he's just gonna report to you that, hey, look, the bean counters have decided we get a 90% KPI this year. You're not going to say, hey, we should get a 95%. They're like, no, we're not. That's not up for negotiations. Like, they're telling you stuff so you can make your financial plans and, roughly make stuff out. Like, they're not, it's not there for you to talk and give feedback that they're going to change stuff on.
To be fair, I would say the Greenwood situation probably had a little bit of that. Like, obviously, United were like, we want him to play, but they realised that even if it's just the optics of it, they needed the women's team on side. So I would say my thought would be the women's team came back and were just like, nope.
Team, apparently they decided this before the women's team came back that he's not going to play. So so they decided he's not going to come back purely because of the sheer amount of outrage online.
Yeah.
Because everybody figured out what the decision was going to be. Yeah. Which were like, okay, this was always going to be the reaction. Why are you surprised?
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody here is like, you obviously made it worse by putting the women's players under the bus.
Yeah.
But nobody was, these women fans weren't going to be like, oh, Mason Greenwood comes back. We hope that he has learned his lesson and we will support him and then we'll hope he turns around his new leaf, blah, blah, blah. And then, no, they're not going to say that. They're going to be like, this is unacceptable. He's a Manchester United player. We've seen what he's done, and like, this is a very sensitive case because there is, on social media, the direct evidence of what he's done on a video. And like, obviously, this has not gone to court. It's all like whether he's committed the crime they were going to potentially charge him for is a different question.
Yeah.
Because I want to be careful because I don't want to put anyone I don't want to potentially put the alleged victim under the bus by casting any doubt on her story. I'm merely saying that it's out. We've got good evidence. It's on video. Pretty much everybody who follows football has watched it. It doesn't look good.
It doesn't look good. No. I say it hasn't got to a court of law yet, but so it's all allegedly. But
if you were, even your online Manchester United fans, your Adam McCulloughs, your Andy Mittens, and they're this is not a good look. When they were figured obviously they've done it badly, but it's a bad look that he's gonna come back to the team. What sort of example does it set to the rest of the club and the young players? And the genuine.
Exactly.
Nobody was. There's a few Manchester United fans who were kind of oh, he'll get a chance to. He's still young. He can change, and we can probably. As a player, we can, help him turn his life around, blah, 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 and this. But nobody seems to think what he's done is, didn't happen, or the stuff is made up, as far as I can tell, online. And while some fans were obviously we're excited to potentially have him back because he's a great player, sure. And then there's, most of them seem to be oh, it's not a good look for the club, it's really bad that he's not. He's the fact, sure, do an investigation even if you were planning to let him go, but if you've done your investigation, then you could have clearly the investigation was there. If they were deciding to keep him all along, the investigation was clearly there to just let the case simmer and cool down, and then he'd come back. Not in the beginning of a season, but once the season has started. But the thing is, there's no right time. Once he's in the team, if he had gone to preseason and started playing, that was in the team, then you could have had the reaction and then decided, okay, no, preseason's shown that it's not. But at least if they decided, no, we're going to power through this, we don't care, because we're the Glaziers, then at least he had a preseason under his belt.
Yeah, exactly.
And he could have actually performed for the team, which he can't. He wasn't really going to be able to do. You're not even getting the result of we get a good player at the club. You get a player who's not ready to play for the club.
Yeah, exactly.
Because he's not been practicing and not been training. So you're not getting either of the. You're not getting the thing you want, and you're getting the thing that everybody hates, or most people hate, which is him coming back and playing for the club.
You get the downside of all the negative publicity, and none of the good side of having a good player playing for you.
Yes.
To say he's going to be undercooked, so he's not going to play well. Yeah.
I don't condone Mason Greenwood playing for Manchester United. My personal opinion, but I don't make decisions at Manchester United. And I would find it very difficult to cheer. I find it very difficult to cheer for people like Ryan Giggs. He's a Manchester United legend, right? Mason Greenwood has done nothing for Manchester United, compared to Ryan Giggs.
Yeah.
As a player. So, Ryan Giggs, we don't need to compare people either, but just as an example. So I don't personally, but the club will make a decision with that. They'll make a decision. But the whole, the way they've stuffed it up. You have to have the cojones to follow up with your unpopular decision if you're gonna make an unpopular decision. If it turns out halfway through the season it's too much, that's okay. At least you had the cojones to do it properly.
Yeah, exactly. I guess that's the thing. If you're going to make this decision, just step up to the plate, put on the big boy pants, and be we're making this decision, and then see how it goes. It's trying to keep it secret and pretend it's not really happening and stuff, and then just making it worse. Especially in this day and age, you say there's this thing called the internet. It's always kind of everyone's, for right or wrong, everyone's made their own decisions. It's pretty straightforward what's happened, but you say it hasn't been through the courts, so we can't, it hasn't had that test.
Through the courts, but because it's not gone through the courts, it doesn't mean it's not something he's not going to face in the future.
Well, it's now just what's the court of public opinion, right? And so that means that that makes it A, possibly worse, B, not really, but C, it still happens. So the actual event's horrendous. So
yeah,
yeah, it's just crazy.
Yeah, there's there's plenty of clubs who have bad situations behind the scenes in the Premier League, and I think like Manchester United at the moment take the cake. Like there's clearly there's like very little control and really bad communication. Like the Glazers have always been bad at communicating. There's really bad communications. Like we don't know what's happening with this whole takeover and buyout. They've kind of gone radio silent. The club has got a toxic atmosphere. It could be a very bad season for United. Like I don't know how the fans could just be in a bad mood, booing all the game, not necessarily directed at the players, but just to be like, hey, we're here to make the Glaziers sell the club. We hate, they're shown they're incompetent as owners, which yeah, I agree with. Now, and we'll obviously we'll see how it progresses. We've got another week left of the transfer window. Whether United buy another striker, whether they buy another midfielder. They also need a backup keeper. So because they've had a lot of players go, and there's a bunch of players at the club who are not going to play. Maybe Scott McTominay will stay if we don't get another midfielder. But there's so many players at the club who, like Harry Maguire, still not left, and a bunch of other players who are still here that United have failed to sell, and it's like it shows the incompetence in general in at the club. They're incapable of closing deals or getting deals done for either selling or buying. So it's gonna feels like it's gonna be another long season at United.
So yeah, you say you'll have to say week left of the transfer window. So who knows what gets thrown up in this last week. I mean, for us, we've still got a few. We still haven't moved on Lukaku yet. So see what happens there. See, might move to the Saudi Pro League, but
loan Lukaku to us for a season.
Sure, why not? What's the worst that could happen?
Knowing the ridiculousness of world football right now, we'll find out that Mbappe is going to United on loan.
You say that like a joke, but it probably isn't.
Apparently he's already told them, oh, I like your plans and blah blah blah, and you're just like, look, I'm not gonna complain if we have Mbappe for a season. That's gonna be awesome.
I don't think anybody would really complain too much, would they?
No, absolutely not. This would be like one season of GOAT versus GOAT in the Premier League, and I think people would be, even if it turns out to not work for United, which it probably won't, it's still gonna be funny. It'll still be like highlights in box office, I think.
Yeah, no, definitely. It would definitely be total total box office must see TV.
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing. PSG want to get something for him. They don't want him to keep playing at PSG. They're doing a full rebuild. He's like, I am not going to Saudi Arabia to play for 1 year, even for $700 million, which, good on you. To be fair, he's already made $500 million at PSG. So he's like, I've made my money now.
Yeah, I don't need to go there to make money.
And, if he likes it at United, who knows? Maybe he doesn't go to Real Madrid next year. Huh?
Who knows?
Like, he's like, it's better for both me and Haaland's brand if we're both at the same league and playing each other every year. I mean, I would encourage that sort of talk and thoughts from Mbappe. Like, absolutely.
Yeah. I see they've PSG asking for, was it 250 million euros for their transfer fee from that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that which is a nice high amount.
Yeah, 250 million euros for for a player who's only got one more season is PSG being a bit cheeky, but you know, if they're contemplating loan deals,
Yeah,
then you know, I can imagine they'll take whatever you give them. If they're like a loan deal is 60 million and you go, okay, we pay 80 million for transferring him, I'm sure they're not going to complain. They'll be like, yeah, that's another 20 million. That's
yeah,
better than nothing.
better than nothing, exactly.
You can't be like, oh, but Saudi offered this. And Mbappe's like, I'm not going to Saudi. I don't care what you say.
Yeah, that's good for Saudi Arabia, I guess. Good work, Saudi Pro League. I'm over here.
Yeah. Um, so it'll be interesting. There's still, I think Chelsea is still gonna buy. We will do a proper review of the transfer window in a couple of weeks once it closes on the 1st of September. But there's still much to happen, I think, for all the clubs. I can't imagine Liverpool's done,
No,
for example.
Well, I don't think anybody's really done, are they? I'm sure there'll be a few here and there that come in.
City have gotten a new player as well, Doku. You're just like, oh, City, we didn't even hear a rumor. City just got a player. Like, why can't other clubs do that? Like 250 mils to to Real Madrid. I can see why Madrid's like, why would we do that? He's leaving in a year.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it's gonna break the world transfer record for a player who's only got a year left on his contract, and um, and we can get him for a free next year, and he can get more money. Even Mbappe, I'm sure, would be like, I can get more money if I move to PSG on a free, move to Real Madrid on a free.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no reason for me to. He was left out of PSG's preseason tournament, so it would be a huge turnaround if he ended up playing. But I can't imagine that like he's gonna play for PSG. I'm sure he's gonna have to.
I wouldn't imagine so either.
Like PSG have to do something to like cut some of their losses. Like they're paying him ridiculous money. Like as I said, he had 500 million in a 3-year contract.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
sorry, it was 500 million if he played the whole 5 years, but after 3 years he was allowed to leave on a free if you know if he wanted to continue. So he's earned 300 million. So he's like,
yeah. Doesn't need to go somewhere just for the money. You can.
Yeah, I mean, 700 million's nice. He'd have 1 billion, like, you know, like a nice round figure, but he's like, I don't need 1 billion. Like, I can earn it slowly, like.
Exactly.
Because even 1 year at a league that's not a top tier league, at this stage of his career, will probably, like, you know, lower his, like, both his brand value and potentially his development. Like, the thing is, like, Haaland's had a year at City and he's won a treble. Like, you know, Mbappe, I'm sure, is looking at that and going, okay, like, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
I could be at a club where we're competing for trebles. Why am I at PSG? Like, sure, we've won lots, but we haven't won the Champions League. And most of my friends are gone. Neymar finally left for Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Before we go, I would like to shout out Neymar a little bit. I feel like he gets a lot of stick, but he is one of those absolute wonderful players to watch when he's on song and he's playing well, and he'll score these worldy goals and like great passes, and he'll have games. He's the last of the flair players in the world, like somebody who plays with instinct and and sure, he can play in a system like he did at Barcelona, but he's an incredible, he's the last remaining flair player in the world. He's not all system player like at a top club. And that's why I'll always love watching him. And I feel like he's one of those players that PSG later on will start looking back more fondly. Like 250 million, sure, they didn't win the Champions League. They came to the final, and he pretty much got them to the final. And then he was injured
Yeah.
at the final.
Yeah.
And PSG looked like they were cruising to that final until Bayern Munich um, scored 2 goals in the last 2 minutes of that game. And like there's Neymar at the side, like crying, and then he obviously similar things happen at Brazil. For Brazil at World Cups, he gets injured, he can't play, and Brazil gets knocked out. He's
Yeah.
won an Olympic medal for Brazil as captain. No Brazilian football team had ever won in the Olympics, so that he completed the trophy case for the Brazilian men's football team.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, so that's always, nobody can take that away from him. I understand people going on about how he doesn't have, he didn't fully look after himself. He didn't always train. He liked the good life, and I'm like, you know what? Neymar has to live his life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
football players should. Not every player should be a machine. Like, not everyone can be. Not every player can be Ronaldo and Messi and be that. If Neymar can be 80% as good as Lionel Messi and Ronaldo give only 70% of the effort. Like those guys clearly give 95 to 100. Not
Yeah.
everybody can give 95 to 100 all the time. Like Neymar's not built that way. He's doing
Yeah.
70% and going, "Yep, I'm still like 80% as good as they are or 85% as good as they are with 70% effort."
Yeah. Exactly.
Like I get the rest of my time to enjoy my life, get to chill, go to the club, hang out with my friends, enjoy the company of various beautiful ladies. This is like, really he's living his best life, right?
Exactly.
Are we so capitalist that we think somebody should be doing, like should be working harder instead of enjoying their life more? At this stage, like you don't get to be 20 in your 20s, early 30s, forever. You only get that part of your life once. Like
Exactly.
Neymar's not gonna look back and go, "Oh, there's nothing. I could have done things. I could have had more fun. I spent too much time working." He's like, "No, you got to enjoy your life, man. Like,
Yeah. Exactly.
especially because he's come from his background where he, you know, in the favelas, and he's had a hard childhood and young life. So he's worked his way out and got generational wealth for his family. He's allowed to enjoy his life.
He is allowed to enjoy his life. And he's saying he's still performing, so
I know everybody's like, oh, if I had those skills, it's given to an elite few. Yeah, but it's still up to him to do what he wants to do with
and to be
that
fair,
skill.
if you had that skill that's given to an elite few and you can perform at that level and you got that famous and could demand that wage, what are you going to do with the money? You're going to go out and enjoy yourself when you can, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, he's doing what everybody else would do if they were in his exact situation. But as you say, maybe Ronaldo and Messi. That's like,
Yeah, and sure, I'm sure Ronaldo and Messi enjoy their going out every now and then, but
yeah,
they're family men, and they have kids and all
yeah, yeah.
that.
They're all settled and middle
Yeah,
aged now.
exactly. Whereas Neymar was living his best life in Paris, going to
Yeah,
fashion shows, hanging out in the left bank. You know,
yeah. Why not? Eh? Why not?
why not? Yeah, you're allowed to have interests outside of your job.
Exactly.
And so I don't feel sorry for him, but I do feel because he has enjoyed his life. But I do feel like he is underrated
Yeah, yeah,
as
definitely.
for his career and what he's done as a player.
Yeah. I think
And now,
unfortunately,
so
Neymar, he sort of had a few moments that seem to have stuck it as they and
oh yeah, I understand why people dislike Neymar because he's done some ridiculous things with the diving and all that. Like I
yeah.
get all that part, but mm,
He
that's
does what he
like
does.
that's
Yeah.
He does what he does. Like, that's fine. You can dislike him for being a diver. Like, I get that.
Yes.
I'm just saying that, saying he hasn't met his full potential. Like, yeah, but most players don't. What are
Yeah.
you gonna do? Diego Maradona probably didn't live to his potential either,
No, no.
but he lived his best life.
He lived to the potential that he wanted to live to. And Neymar's the same, right? In fact, that's what you can say
Yeah,
about all of them, basically. The top level footballers are basically living to the potential they want to live to.
exactly. Now, as before we go, we end as always with
Mm-hmm.
Mo Watch.
Mo watch, Mo watch, Mo watch.
First round of Serie A, Roma, 2-2 draw with Salernitana. I'm sure they're not happy about that. Salernitana just about missed out on getting relegated last
Yes.
season. But Jose Mourinho has already had an interesting time. Had to step down in his role in the UEFA board because he abused a referee against Sevilla. But that was like a couple months ago. He's been relatively quiet now. No big announcements or outbursts. But I'm sure he's not happy with how Salatina started their season. Uh, he's probably going to have a bit of a bottle at the players, and we'll see how they go later on. But it's an interesting team for Roma at the moment. He's got his old Chris Smalling
Yeah.
at Roma with him, and Tammy Abrams. He always takes his sons along, his favorites.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's just one of those things about Jose Mourinho. Like, clearly in Ted Lasso, when Nate the Great went to West Ham, he was supposed to become a Mourinho parody. But Mourinho is not like evil Nate, right? His personal relationships are really, really important to him. To the point where like he has players who absolutely adore him, and like and he takes them well like how many different clubs has he taken Michael Essien to? I'm sure Michael Essien might be in Roma, probably as well.
Somewhere in the back.
Somewhere. Yeah. And players like even players like Jesse Lingard would talk about how Jose would call him and ask him how things are going, and like, oh, what are you up to? He's like, oh, I'm going to get some. He thinks like, oh yeah, I'm just going to get some takeaways. He's like, oh yeah, what are you having? He's like this and that, and like, oh yeah, cool. Where's Marcus? He's like, well, not with me. I'm not his mom, And Marcus, Jose's like, okay, I just wanted to see if you knew where he was, and they're like, all right, now that's cool, But that's a very human interaction, like.
That's just hilarious.
And like, so yeah, it's very interesting because obviously he didn't get along. He definitely has players he doesn't get along with, but it's interesting who did get along
Yeah.
with him, and who have good things to say about him. It's always like a particular type of player, like your Jesse Lingards, your Dele Alli, but also obviously players like your Michael Essiens who like run through walls for him
Yeah.
on one
Exactly.
leg.
Oh, on no legs, just about with Essien. Like,
Yeah.
I see an interesting rumor here that potentially Mourinho might try and get Mason Greenwood over to Roma, which could be interesting.
That could be interesting. Apparently, when they got Rasmus Holland, one of the things they were considering is loaning out Mason Greenwood to Atalanta,
Mm.
which
Yeah, yeah.
Atalanta kind of said, nope, not happening.
It does look
But
like he's likely to head off to Italy, since a few clubs over that way he's been at least offered out to. So
yeah, I think it's gonna be. He needs to get out of England for sure. He
yeah,
can't
100%.
play here. Like, that's just not gonna work out for him. Goes to another country. Rebuild. It's also like for the alleged victim, if he's not constantly appearing in the news and doing stuff, that's also probably good for them.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what's happened, but it's also good for them to not have to look at Mason Greenwood in newspapers and the internet all the time. If he's in Italy, he's kind of going to be out of mind, assuming she like lives in the UK.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, on that really, really uplifting note. Thank you so much for listening.
Really
uplifting. And we look forward to hearing from you next time.
See you next time.
Well, that is the end. Thanks for listening all the way through.
If you liked what you heard, we have even more. 9642 Discord and a Buy Me a Coffee.
Pretty sure it's Buy Me a Beer.
Oh yeah, buy me a beer on buymeacoffee.com.
In both these places, you can talk to us, and we may even listen, especially if you do buy a said beer or coffee. I might still be confused.
Yes, we're easily bribed. All links are in the show notes below.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
This is on YouTube.